Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Cobb County Board of Commissioners meeting this January 28th, 2025. I'm pleased this evening that we have Pastor Hunter Howard here with us from Encounter Church. He will be providing our invocation, and that will be followed by the pledge, which will be brought by Officer Pamela De La Cruz. For those of you willing and able, please stand for both our invocation and our pledge.
Thank you for the honor and privilege of praying with you and for you tonight. Almighty God, your word says that you urge us to pray for all people and ask God to help them, intercede on their behalf, and give thanks for them. Especially pray this way for those who are in authority, so we can live peaceful and quiet lives marked by godliness and dignity. This is good and pleases you, who want everyone to be saved and understand the truth. So tonight, I ask you for all people in Cobb County. I thank you for the good people of this community. Thank you for our leaders. Thank you for those in authority. Thank you for our commissioners tonight. I ask you to help them and to help every man, woman, child, and family in our county. This is good. This pleases you. You also taught us, Jesus, to pray that your kingdom come soon and your will be done on earth as in heaven. So tonight we ask you that in Cobb County, your kingdom come, let righteousness and goodness reign in our county, and let your will be done in Cobb County as it is in heaven. You also said that if we need wisdom, we can ask our generous God, and he'll give it to us, and you won't rebuke us for asking. So tonight we're asking you for wisdom for our commissioners and your wisdom for everyone in authority in this county to make good, righteous decisions that will bless every member of our community. We thank you for this meeting tonight. We pray your presence in this place and that you would be with us as decisions are made. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor, for that powerful invocation, and thank you also, Officer De La Cruz, for being with us this evening. Our meeting is now officially called to order. Tonight, we have 3 presentations before us. The first one is to provide certificates of achievement to Mount Perrin Christian School's varsity cheerleading team. For those of you who are here for this presentation this evening, please join Commissioner Gamble up front.
Come on in, girls. It is with great honor that I get to introduce to you the Mount Perrin Christian. They secured their 13th straight competition for cheer title. The number 13 is the symbol of triumph. In November, the Eagles claimed their 13th consecutive state championship, extending a record-breaking streak. This remarkable achievement not only marks the longest championship run in Cobb County history, but also sets a new benchmark for any girls' sports team in state history. So congratulations to Coach Henderson and Coach Ray on this achievement. And I would like each of you girls to go ahead and introduce yourself, and we have certificates for you.
I'm Caroline Robertson.
I'm Zuri Milbrett.
I'm Lila Schmitz.
I'm Charlotte Owens.
I'm Ashley Kale.
I'm Jada Johnson.
I'm Anise Sindoni.
I'm Cameron Kaufman.
I'm Emery Abernathy.
I'm Taylor Osterwood.
I'm Anna Catherine McKenzie.
I'm Abby Cofield.
I'm Joy Sadler.
I'm Kendall Abernathy.
I'm Paisley Everett.
I'm Sydney Ojibwe.
Kate Henderson.
Shelley Ray. Coach, would you like to say anything? Either of you?
I would just like to say how proud we are of these athletes. It is amazing to watch them from when we start in the month of April or so, and we go all the way through the end of November. And they work really hard. If you have never watched a cheerleading competition in the state of Georgia, it's a treat. There's tumbling, there's jumping, there's gymnastics, there's dance, lots of cheering. And these girls are just incredible. They worked so hard, and we're just super proud of them.
We'll get you the rest of your certificates here.
Picture time, everybody kind of.
And parents, yes, you can come on up front to get a good view of your daughter so you can capture this moment.
All right, y'all ready? Smile, 3, 2, everybody's blinking, got it, good.
All right, thank you. Congratulations.
We'll see you next year.
Okay, our next presentation is to provide a proclamation recognizing January as Human Trafficking Prevention Month. For those of you who are here as a part of this presentation, please join Commissioner Richardson up front.
And apologies in advance, a little bit of a mix-up on the actual frame proclamation, but I will read the text of it, and we will make sure that you guys have that promptly. This is an issue that is big enough that it takes everybody's help.
While they're following up here, I do want to recognize our new district attorney who's here, Sonia Allen. If you can wave so they can.
Yes. Congratulations. Okay, so this is a proclamation acknowledging Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So whereas human trafficking is a crime that harms the health and well-being of individuals, families, and communities, after passing the Trafficking Victims Protection Act 25 years ago, an estimated 27.6 million people are still subjected to human trafficking globally, with cases reported in every state, every U.S. state and territory. And whereas human trafficking can affect anyone, but certain populations are at greater risk, including those affected by abuse, violence, poverty, unstable living situations, or social disconnection. Strengthening communities requires collective action to address the conditions that contribute to exploitation, build resilience, and create environments where people are protected from human trafficking and other forms of violence. And whereas a successful response to human trafficking requires a coordinated community-wide effort involving collaboration across sectors and with those who have experienced human trafficking firsthand to ensure services and programs are effective and meet the needs of survivors. And whereas Cobb County government is committed to ensuring that Cobb County government is committed to ensuring that those impacted by human trafficking receive services that are trauma-informed and responsive to their individual needs. We urge individuals, families, and organizations to raise awareness by accessing resources at humantraffickinghotline.org. And we, the Cobb County Board of Commissioners, do hereby proclaim January as Human Trafficking Prevention Month, reaffirming our commitment to raising awareness, improving education, providing resources, and building diverse public-private partnerships to support a more coordinated and comprehensive response, this the 28th day of January 2025. And certainly want to open up the floor for anyone that wants to add remarks to this very serious and very involved area of work. Would you like to speak? Of course.
Thank you for this, and thank the board. I just want to say thank you to all of our partners. This is a very serious issue that I believe definitely needs awareness and to be addressed. Our partnerships with the Sheriff's Office, Cobb County Police Department, K9 Sherlock, and Rose, and Angela, and the Family Justice Center, Marietta PD, all of our partners, I just want to say thank you for the efforts that have been placed here.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you, Madam DA. Yes, couldn't agree more, and I tell you that there's not much that moves a chief or leader or even the newest rookie on the police force than this subject. It's great that we're recognizing it. The realities are very, very sad, and therefore something that you see this type of support community-wide and really across the whole nation and the world for this particular effort. So thank you to everybody that's involved in it, especially those that are involved in the weeds of it and that have to see the terrible aftermath of it. So my hat is off to the people in the field really doing the work and the people that are really working so hard to get funding and support for this. Thank you.
Going once? I'm going to take the liberty then just to say, guys, we're all charged. This is an issue that's big in Georgia, so it takes all of us to work together to make this happen, working with our partners, and definitely grateful to be in a state that prioritizes this issue. So let's take our picture. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Last but not least, this evening, we have a proclamation that I will be providing to the Crimson Community Foundation. For those of you who are a part of this presentation, please join me up front.
sir. I know, how you doing? Yes, thank you.
All right. It is my pleasure to provide this proclamation. Whereas the Crimson Community Foundation has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to creating a pathway to success for young African American boys through its comprehensive educational programming, life-changing scholarships, invaluable mentoring opportunities, and impactful community service initiatives. And whereas since its founding in 2001, Crimson Community Foundation has dedicated itself solely to uplifting and supporting young African American boys in grades 4 through 12, providing them with the tools, resources, and confidence needed to achieve excellence. And whereas with locations in Cobb County and throughout Metro Atlanta, Crimson Community Foundation has expanded the worldview of countless young men, empowering them to make lasting contributions to their community, nation, and world. And whereas the tireless efforts of Crimson Community Foundation have fostered growth, cultural development, and a spirit of excellence among young African American boys, creating a future where these driven and deserving individuals are equipped to thrive in all facets of their lives. Therefore, I, Cobb Commission Chairwoman Lisa Cupid, do recognize and commend the Crimson Community Foundation for its extraordinary work in empowering young African American boys and inspiring a brighter future for generations to come. This the 20th day of January 2025.
Thank you very much. My name is Lamont Bates. I'm the current chair of the Crimson Community Foundation, and with me I have some of the awesome men who we spend 2 to 3 times a month. With this school year, we have over probably 130 young men, grades 4 through 12. And in those times we meet with them, we're doing leadership development, we're doing STEM exposure, we're doing all the things that the chairman read on this thing, but the goal is to expose these young men to things otherwise they wouldn't be exposed to, so that they can grow up and contribute to society just as all of us do. So I thank the parents who entrust us, and I thank all of us who are doing the work, and I thank you for this acknowledgement.
Thank you so much. So we'll line up and take a photo. Lamont, why don't you get in the middle and provide the proclamation to someone in the middle? I didn't recognize, we do have our councilman here from the city of Smyrna, Mr. Ricky Oglesby. Thank you for being here. Commissioners, before we get to the public hearing portion of this meeting, I would like to move to add the following non-agenda item: to recommend the appointment of the Support Services Agency Director. Is there a second?
Second, in discussion.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
And I have a new statement to read for the record.
Okay.
Are we all one or one for all? The Home Rule Resolution precipitated an illegal action through the act of 3 commissioners and has been ruled unconstitutional multiple times. 2 former commissioners with good intentions are seated here today, even though their terms have expired and the state of Georgia no longer recognizes them as qualified elected officials. The Home Rule Resolution enabled the Board of Commissioners majority to avoid violating Cobb County's enabling legislation and allow a commissioner to serve while not residing within the district. Yet now it is becoming very clear that the past 2 years and 3 court rulings deeming the Home Rule Resolution unconstitutional, the resolution was not about protecting the office, but a specific office holder to which OCGA 1610-4 addresses. But of course, this is only applicable if a constituent bears the brunt of yet another legal challenge. Upon entering into office, I took the oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and Georgia and all applicable laws. The Board of Commissioners is comprised of 5 elected members, all with equal authority to act upon issues pertaining to Cobb County. Yet we sit here today, the county attorney refusing to provide direction that is not in conflict with all applicable laws and statutes, and a chair who is allowing this to continue. While I am being expected to participate in a potentially illegal meeting as if nothing unconstitutional has occurred, now with individuals serving beyond their legal power or authority, also known as ultra vires, I would like the clerk to record this statement with each and every vote so that I may not be in violation of OCGA 451110.
For those of you who may be tuning in for the first time and are not following that statement, both Commissioners Gambrell and Burrell have been providing statements to be recorded with their vote, given some pretty unique and, I will admit, controversial elements that are before you today. We do have 2 commissioners that are seated here on the dais beyond their elected 4-year term. They are sitting here, however, in full strength of their legal right until that legal right has been successfully challenged in a court of law. As our enabling legislation for the county does have language providing that they are able to serve until their successor is rightfully in place. This is why they are here today. I understand that this is not without controversy. And this is why in our last meeting, each commissioner was provided an opportunity to speak on this matter. It's unfortunate that our county is in this position in a very unique circumstance where the state has superseded the general practice that we've had in following the local delegation's interest of how our county lines are drawn for our district seats. This has resulted in impacting a duly elected commissioner. And with that, this board sought the input from our county attorney's office to determine how to move forward. In moving forward, we did assert through what we perceived was our constitutional right and supporting the maps that were drawn and supported by our local delegation. Those maps have been challenged up to the highest court in this state, and ultimately those maps were ruled to not be constitutional. This board has accepted that. Let me make that clear. This board has accepted that. However, we felt, and I personally felt as chair, that the violation did occur in not respecting the interest of our local delegation, which had been common practice for every other time that the maps have been drawn. And for this to happen to our county, and for us not to be united in that, I think is a shame, but that does not mean that I will acquiesce my leadership in defending and asserting the integrity of this county and those who were duly elected to their seat. We did what we could by law, and we are recognizing where things stand by law. And again, with the right that our commissioners have under the enabling legislation, they will continue to serve as she seems fit until there is a successful legal challenge. With that, commissioners, I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything before we vote on this matter.
Well, I guess I'll just go ahead and read my comment or my statement into the record as I did last week or at the last meeting, for the privilege of those or even the interest of those who were not here or had an opportunity to watch the meeting. But I'll add that I think that the thought is if you repeat something enough times, then people will come to believe it as being true. But I assure you that I am not in my seat illegally, despite the repeated claims or the seeds of doubt to suggest that I am sitting here illegally. Both Act 562 and the county's enabling legislation contain language indicating that a commission member will serve for the term of office specified therefore in this subsection and until their respective successors are elected and qualified, meaning that the commission members serve until their successor is elected and qualified. This provision was specifically designed to prevent any interruptions in representation of our residents, ensuring the work of the Board of Commissioners continues without disruption, even amidst political division and discord. Act 562, to reiterate, refers to an official remaining in their position after their term has expired, and once again, and until a successor is elected and qualified. A holdover period typically cannot alter the length of the official's term, as that role is temporary and is tied to the delay of the proper transition. The delay in this case, as most are aware, is a special election. OCGA Section 1-3-11 reads that no office to which a person has been elected shall be abolished, nor the term of the office shortened or lengthened by local or special act during the term for which such person was elected, unless the same shall be approved by the people affected in a referendum. So in other words, the Board of Commissioners, the seat is a 4-year term. That seat cannot be shortened to a 3-year term or extended to a 5-year term without it being on a referendum. So a commissioner that sits beyond her term is not, this law does not apply because this law specifically speaks to the length of the office, not the length that the person is in the office. Regarding impact on terms, holdover does not extend, once again, the official term. It temporarily extends the time an individual serves in the role to bridge gaps. OCGA 1-3-11 protects the integrity of the office and the term for which the official was elected. It directly prohibits lengthening or shortening terms by legislative action, ensuring that terms remain as originally decided by voters unless a referendum says otherwise. As a holdover commissioner, as described in Act 562, I will retain full authority and responsibilities of the office until the successor assumes the role. The residents of this district elected me in 2020 and overwhelmingly re-elected me in 2024 to serve in this capacity. In an era of increasing polarization, it's important to remember that my role is not defined by partisan differences, but my commitment to serve the people of District 4. I will fulfill my duty to my community as the law has clearly outlined and work towards bridging divides, ensuring consistent and effective representation for all Cobb Countyans. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll now hear from Commissioner Burrow.
Yes. Thank you. I did not read my whole statement, but it is on file for anyone who would like to see it. I would just like to comment, first of all, that the legislature did not violate any laws by redistricting in 2022 for the maps. It may be customary for the Cobb delegation to provide the map and support the map. That didn't happen. The full General Assembly voted on the map, but the bottom line is the home rule map has been deemed unconstitutional 3 times now. So the bottom line is we do not have home rule powers when it comes to redistricting. So that's what was illegal for us to draw our own maps or put in place. For over 2 years now, we've been dealing with this. So I, as all of my colleagues up here, took an oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the state, the county, and the United States. And I intend to continue to follow the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'll only read a portion of my comments that are on record as well. Certainly extend apologies considering we are trying to add an agenda item to this, but it is important, and these comments were shared at the last board meeting, but certainly there are more people at this particular meeting. So you all heard, no one's ever contended that there was an illegal action taken by the state legislature. But when that did happen, it did introduce some issues because it was inconsistent with the normal practices, which were gentlemen's rules. Always stated as these were gentlemen rules, just for the chatter that's happening on this dais that I hear out of my ears. I've always been very clear about that. As a response, because of the unique situation that it put Cobb County in, home rule was pursued by the county, in which the county contended that the map was the definition of a material and not a procedure. That was the whole point of the argument. The apportionment office's approved map, which was 1257, was then used under the Home Rule Amendment Clause, and that's what was adjudicated as to whether or not the amendment clause could be used for that particular action. Please keep in mind, though, that that particular contention has yet to be truly adjudicated because the court case holding that question was thrown out. Later, due to an unrelated case, a ruling using knowledge based upon the thrown-out case called for the cancellation of the election last year, by which the county voluntarily adopted the General Assembly's map. This created the vacancy by law in District 2. So we have a different legal question. There's a legal question that affects District 4 and District 2 with regards to the holdover components in state law. And there is the question about what defines a vacancy, which is currently under contention with the suit that I have. So that created that vacancy by law, which I filed a challenge, and that was heard in the Cobb Superior Court and decided on New Year's Eve at 3 p.m. Between then and the meeting January 14th, so January 13th was when the appeal was filed. Between those dates, this particular seat sat vacant. All District 2 constituents had their emails forwarded and calls to the front office. During the snowstorm, there was no elected official in place for this district. 200,000 people. When the ruling came down, I learned that an appeal to a higher court was available to me, as it is available to every person in the nation. Any appeal for a higher court, that's just how our court systems work. And after much consideration, I did file that appeal. While the appeal is in place, a stay is in effect. Therefore, I'm serving with de facto powers imbued by the state, by state law. while the appeal is in place, and that is current and consistent with Act 562 as well. And law, because of the holdover clause. So both things are in effect concurrently for this district. And that will allow me to continue to sit as a de facto commissioner. Some would say that it's unacceptable, as you've heard, that I'm sitting up here. It's fine, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I would say not having 200,000 people being represented for nearly half the year is unacceptable, and certainly that, thank you, and certainly that the ability for the General Assembly to legally remove an elected official at any time for any county in the state is also unacceptable. Just as some members of this board have sued the county relentlessly for reasons that they believed were important, so I also have the right to do so for things that I believe are important. So this is not just about defending my constituents either. This is about defending every constituent for the future. And that is the fight that will eventually set the legal precedent that will continue on for this state. It was never about me, or this particular fight was never about my seat. While this seat has been the one impacted, it is the thing that we can hold on to. It is the tangible seat in a sense. It is a broader concept that's at play here. This is about protecting American values, checks and balances, the process of the courts, the importance of elections, the voice of the voter, and even the election that's underway to determine my successor, which I am actively saying, make sure you go vote. Hold your elected officials to standard. But we also want to protect that they actually can serve and continue to serve and not be removed at any time. Protecting American values is something we all claim to want. The courts will decide whether they hear this appeal. That has not been determined yet. And if I only have 10 days or 90 days, I will continue to show up for my constituents and serve them to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. I think it's important for the public to hear the varying perspectives with respect to this. And I acknowledge as chair that this has been a matter of controversy. It's been quite a divisive matter for our board. But yet, not only do we continue to show up and serve, so do the employees of this county under these very charged circumstances. And so again, I believe it's important for you to understand a little bit of the context behind how we have functioned for 4 years. But I also commend that even despite all of this, that all 5 of us and the almost 5,000 employees of this county continue to show up every day and serve Cobb County. With that, Commissioners, we did have a motion and a second. If there's no more further discussion, I'll call the question. The motion carries 5-0. And with that, Commissioners, I will turn things over to our County Manager, Dr. McMorris.
Thank you, Chairwoman, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to bring before you a recommendation for the appointment of our Support Services Director, Mr. Stephen White. A little bit about Mr. White. He joined Cobb County as the tax assessor in 2005. The senior appraiser and was promoted to deputy chief appraiser in 2010. He has served as the director or chief appraiser since 2013, overseeing all of the day-to-day operations of the tax assessor's office in accordance with Georgia law and holding the responsibility of the overall compilation of the county's tax digest. That's huge. Mr. White holds an Associate's of Business Administration degree from Pennsylvania State University. He's also a graduate of the county's Excel Management Program, which is held by and hosted by the Carl Vincent Institute of Government through the University of Georgia. Stephen is a certified instructor for the International Association of Assessing Officers and holds several certifications, including from the Pennsylvania Real Estate Appraisers Board, the New Jersey Appraisal Board, and the Georgia Department of Revenue. It is my pleasure tonight Chairwoman and the Commissioners, to ask you to accept my recommendation in naming Mr. Stephen White as our Support Services Agency Director.
Thank you, Dr. McMorris. With that, I move that we approve the appointment of Mr. Stephen D. White as the Support Services Agency Director effective February 17th, 2025.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? I'll call the question.
Congratulations.
I'll call the question. Call. That's okay. The motion carries 5-0.
And this time I waited till you all actually voted. Do you mind if I ask Mr. White to come up so that our
Congratulations, Steve.
public can greet him? And if he would like to say a few words, thank you. Welcome to the team.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the support. The Board of Commissioners, the Chairwoman, County Manager, the Board of Assessors, the management team at the Tax Assessor's Office, all the employees at the Assessor's Office, and the fellow department heads and agency heads who I work with every day. What a great group. And probably most importantly, my wife and my two sons, who, if it were not for them, oh, well, here she is. There's my wife.
Yay.
Oh, and my son.
One of them.
So thank you so much for all of your help, and look forward to working with you in a new role.
All right. Thank you so much. Congratulations. and
Congratulations.
Look forward to working with you also. All right. All right. Commissioners, we do have two public hearings that are before us. We have moved up the second public hearing to be the first one because we know that most of the interest tonight is with respect to the homestead exemption public hearing. So first, we will have the public hearing, which will be provided by our DOT Director, Drew Ressler.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairwoman, Commissioners, County Manager Drew Ressler with DOT. Utilization of task order-based contracts allows the department to recognize savings of staff time and other resources, as well as increase efficiency by eliminating the requirements and process to advertise qualified projects individually. Master task order contracts provide the flexibility and efficiency to have on-call expertise that may be required for smaller defined tasks. Separate from this procurement and prior to the award of each task order over $50,000 or any task order funded by SPLOST funds, including specifics of the task and associated costs, will be presented to the Board of Commissioners for approval in a subsequent agenda item. In accordance with state law, the board is required to conduct a public hearing prior to expending county funds of $100,000 or more to employ an independent consultant or consulting firm, or to conduct an independent study or survey. The department anticipates awarding specific master task order contracts for professional services that could exceed $100,000 for each task order. Therefore, the department requests authorization to conduct a public hearing prior to expending these funds. And the department therefore recommends the Board of Commissioners conduct a public hearing prior to expending $100,000 or more to employ consulting firms for master task order contracts for professional services.
Thank you. For our public hearing, we allow an unlimited number of speakers to address the matter that was presented and that matter only for up to 3 minutes. For anyone here who would like to address this matter presented by our DOT Director, which is again with respect to employing a consulting firm for a master task order contract for professional services, you are able to address the board at this time. So I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing.
Good evening. My name's Craig Harfoot, and good evening, Commissioners. You know, I always speak about this because mostly it comes out of SPLOST money, which is a slush fund in itself. And hiring consultants, I think it would be great if you'd start hiring consultants under $100,000, and then it wouldn't have to come up here and say anything. But these all seem to be real big numbers. It's sort of like, I think what you haven't got the grasp on yet is we're going to live in a much more frugal economy going forward. You've got property taxes through the roof. You got a new president. He actually is going to go to North Carolina, and he's moved the Corps of Engineers in to do the work, not private contractors with SPLOST money. You can do things efficiently. The Hoover Dam was built under the Army Corps of Engineers, as all big projects were. And if you can't take a clue from what's going on in the bigger picture, and we all fit into this big picture, and you really need to get in-house, and you need to draw from the community, like this group of great men that are mentoring the young people. You know, you got a big mind trust here, and to have to pay for consultants. See, that's the political slush fund in this county, and it is in a lot of places. And you know, they get all this extra money, and then they got it to put into campaigns. It's sort of like the billionaires electing a president. This is not a good thing. We need to end it. And like I said, if you got consultants that do it for $50,000, $60,000, it's all good. It's under 100. But when they get into 200, 300, 500, you could hire permanent people. Because these things, they come up every meeting, every meeting. And I wish we'd be more careful with our money, because it's getting tight for everybody, and it's going to get worse. If they lay off all these federal employees they're talking about, watch out. But anyhow, I can't believe this is the longest 3 minutes I ever had. But thank you.
That was gracious laughter, Craig, gracious. Thank you. Are there any other speakers for part of this public hearing?
Tracy Stevenson, good evening.
Good evening.
I want to speak directly to this consultant conversation. I think there's two different kinds of consultants. When we speak with DOT, it's consulting engineers and consulting architects. These people are helping to design projects, feasibility studies, and so forth. That's a good expense, because that's planning before spending money. It's a little different for me when we look at consultants for political ideas and political direction. I think that's where the disconnect comes from. But I champion also that when we do these proposals, that in the interest of transparency and making sure that everybody knows what they're looking at, why don't we have more graphics on the board? Only occasionally do we get a drawing showing a plot plan or the proposed work that's going to be done. I think that would be very beneficial, helps with transparency, helps people understand. On more than one occasion, I've sat down with Drew afterwards going, what did that mean? And I've been in construction all my life, and I just didn't understand the project. I think I've agreed with him on every one of them and understood every one of them. So I think that's very important. Consulting engineers, consulting architects, especially hired from local firms keeping our dollars here in Cobb County, is a good thing. I don't oppose that at all, and I would hope that whenever y'all vote on this, that's what your intention is, not just for the broad-based consultants, you know, as a broad stroke. But consulting engineers, consulting architects, I've built stuff all over the country. Couldn't have done it without them. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? I see 2 younger members of our audience leaving. Thank you so much for coming here today. It's always nice to see young people participate in our meetings. Are there any other speakers? All right, our public hearing is now closed. Does anyone have any questions on our board for Drew Ressler? Okay, not hearing any. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, we will go to the public hearing that I believe most of our attendees and those watching are interested in. And it is our first public hearing on the opt-out of the statewide adjusted base year ad valorem homestead exemption for Cobb County, Georgia, as defined by law. And this presentation will be brought by our Finance Director, Bill Volkman, and also our new Support Services Director, Stephen White.
Good evening, Chairwoman, Commissioners, County Manager. As you said, this is our first of 3 public hearings related to House Bill 581. And we have a short presentation that Stephen's going to walk through, and then before we open the public hearing, we'll ask the board if you have any questions or comments.
Good evening again. We have put together a presentation that we hope answers a lot of questions. I know a number of you have been receiving emails and things, so we tried to incorporate some of that information in, and hopefully we can help answer any additional questions at the end. This is House Bill 581. This is regarding the creation of a statewide homestead float. Of course, we already have a homestead float in Cobb County on the general fund. This is in regards to only homesteaded properties. And if a county or municipality, school district, taxing authority stays in the program, and I say stay in because all authorities are in the program right now. So everyone is in because it's after January 1st, and you have the ability to opt out if you so choose. If a jurisdiction stays in, the Revenue Commissioner will provide the assessor's office with an inflationary rate or multiplier to use each year for homesteaded properties that are in the statewide homestead program. So this allows local governments to opt out if that's what you so choose. The Board of Commissioners can make this decision regarding the general fund and fire fund. Those are the funds that are affected before you. This would also be a one-time decision, so any future funds would fall under this decision as well. The Board of Commissioners and cities make their own decisions. Whether the schools or the cities, each of them, they all have their own public hearings to hold, et cetera, if they decide to opt out. Authorizes local governments with the homestead exemption to levy a new sales tax. Dante Handel is here with ACCG. Many of you are familiar with Dante. He is very well versed in that portion of the bill and can help answer questions in regards to the sales tax provision. This does not remove any exemptions that currently are in place. So for those who are concerned about their school tax exemption, that stays, regardless of a jurisdiction that would opt in or opt out. And this does not affect the county's general fund float that we currently have. So here's an impact if the county stays in. If we stay in, there is no impact to the general fund because the law specifically states that the jurisdiction goes with whatever float is beneficial to the taxpayer the most. The county's float on the general fund is a frozen value. The value never changes. Staying in the program, there is the inflationary rate that would occur starting next year in 2026. So there is no change to the county's general fund and that float that exists. The fire fund is what would be affected in Cobb County. The fire fund does not have a homestead float on it. Assessments change on the fire fund as the assessment to the fair market value changes as derived by the assessor's office. So in regards to the fire fund, if the county stays in, the increase would only be the amount that the Revenue Commissioner determines for that year, and it would only apply to the fire fund. Because, again, the general fund's float does not change. It is a better program. So just a highlight as well, the 2024 assessed value that properties have would carry over and become the assessed value for 2025 if the county stays in. The first year, the Revenue Commissioner has directed assessors' offices that there will be no change in year one to the assessed value if the county or city or school district stays in. All right, what happens if the county opts out? Again, no change to the float on the general fund. Because that is a program that is already in place, there's no change there. The fire fund, that would remain as it is now. The values for properties would change as the fair market value changed, and there would be no cap on the increase. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Why don't we have our public hearing with our attendees first, and then I'll permit commissioners opportunity to follow up and ask you or Bill any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we are required to have 3 public hearings on this matter should the county opt out, and this is the first of the 3. As with the prior public hearing, we will take an unlimited number of speakers to address this matter and address this matter only, and each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. We do have some speakers that are familiar with our public hearing process, but if you are not, please note that when you do come up and speak, that we ask that you state your full name first, and that you be mindful that there is a timer that is operating on the podium that you can watch to see how much time you have. With that, we'll take our first public speaker, and the public hearing is now officially open.
My name is Craig Harfoot. Good evening. I have questions, and I wanted to be first so that these things would all come out. And the first one is, are you afraid that values will go down? Why would you opt out because of the fire fund? If what's weird is house prices seem to be going up even though there's no new buyers. It's being bought up by institutionals like BlackRock, Mark Spain, handing them off to other people. What I've seen in the community is that, yeah, people bought houses, tore them down, but they actually haven't been able to sell them on the open market. They're actually having to convert their construction loan to a regular loan and move in them. And that's in the East Cobb area where I live. And basically, do you think that the fire fund's going to go staggeringly high in the future, that you need to not opt out or to opt out? It's like there's just real no clarification on any of this. And personally, the whole thing with Fannie and Freddie, I mean, here the county is invested in Georgia Fund 1 with Fannie and Freddie, and in itself is inflationary because, you know, the banks hand over the mortgage, Fannie, Freddie buys them, you buy them from them, and their stocks have gone down recently. But they're talking about taking them private. Well, if they take them private, who's going to buy them? BlackRock, Blackstone? And it's real problematic. You know, I know you all care about affordable housing, but how can you want to inflate housing to get more tax revenues in the county and at the same time want affordable housing? They're diametrically opposed. And, you know, I want you to be asking all these questions, not me, and I want the community to ask these questions because my daughter wants to buy a house, and it's just not in the cards. Even if we bought her the house, I doubt she could stay in it because of taxes, insurance, and whatever. So, and they make decent money, but they're stuck in apartments. And I know this is a community-wide problem, regardless of race, color, whatever. And but thank you.
We'll take our next speaker.
Good evening.
Good
My
evening.
name is Kathy Slough. I live in Marietta, Georgia. I've been in Cobb County for 40 years and have owned my condo for 21 years in the city of Marietta in Cobb County. Thank you for allowing us to speak, Chairperson Cupid and all Cobb County Commissioners. In my research and understanding, HB 581 was originally intended to create a floating homestead exemption that would prevent property taxes from increasing as home values rise, ensuring tax increases would only happen through transparent millage rate votes. Unfortunately, it looks like the bill was altered to include provisions that benefit, in my estimation and research, special interest while potentially harming taxpayers. I'm a taxpayer. Everybody in here is taxpayer. While the original intent was good, the final version contains changes with what appears to be automatic property tax increases, allows up to an additional 3% sales tax increase, impacts me, a senior, through sales taxes. There's no cap on property taxes, removes fair market value caps on rental properties, less transparency, which is important to me, in tax assessments, opt-out option for local governments, and stricter rules for tax appeals, which are hard enough to go through. I, as a taxpayer, a senior, a homeowner, living on Social Security, I urge all of you to opt out of HB 581 and for the state legislature to rewrite the bill without these harmful additions. Thank you for your time.
We'll take our next speaker.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Timothy Parson. What I wanted to talk about here today, for me, it's an interesting dichotomy when you have, where there's going to be an increase in taxes. And for that reason, for me being just a taxpayer, just like anyone that's here, anytime there's any talk about increasing taxes or anything of that set forth, for me, it's all about transparency. And so if it was myself or anyone else that would have to go to a financial institution, before they would lend money, they basically would want to have supporting documents for that. And so then my suggestion, if they're wanting a tax increase upon us, then my suggestion is that they provide full transparency, financial transparency of the county, how every dollar is spent, because that's very important when mostly all businesses that are in business, they usually provide financial transparency of how funds and how everything are spent. Furthermore, seemingly with Cobb County, and it seems like it's been surreptitiously done. You've had these companies, these real estate companies, for example, Invitation Homes, Progress Residential, that have seemingly came in here, and what they've done is they've artificially inflated the housing market by just buying houses. And so what that has done is it's basically, in some zip codes, these investors have at least 100 or more houses in one zip code. And so then if you're trying to create, as we spoke earlier about affordable housing, there's no way that you can possibly have affordable housing. I think if you're wanting to look for more money, I think you need to look at those investors that are bringing, that are buying up all these houses, and there's no regulation or nothing that's in place that prevent them from just running roughshod all throughout the county, buying up tons of houses and inflating the market. So I think before the buck is passed on to us, I think that's something that needs to be looked at. But like I said, if it is full financial transparency on how every dollar is spent, and I think that we can probably, because for me, and I think for anybody else, if you're going to invest in something, then you have to know where your money is going. And I think...
Sir, I'm sorry, your time's up.
Touching that. Good evening, ladies. Donald Barth. I think the first speaker nailed it for you. Which way did it go? Duh. There is so much in that bill that did not make sense when they put it on the ballot. You had to know what you were voting on before you went in there. It is not an appropriate thing the way it is written right now. You all know that. The only one that didn't get the memo, spoke a moment ago. We have to back out of that. 3% sales tax, that's a regressive tax. People like me on a fixed income, you think, where am I going to get that extra 3 cents on the dollar? That's why they call it a regressive tax. I can't go generate more money. I'm stuck with where I am. We need to pay attention to things like that. But one thing we do know is Craig nailed it. I don't know what they're talking about. If you don't know what it's about, get out of it. Let the legislator fix this. I say let's vote and get out of the thing. Vote to opt out. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gary Henderson, and I live in the eastern portion of the 3rd District, and I'm here to ask you to opt out of HB 581. My reasoning is, I will second what has been said before me, but in furtherance, remind you that staying in obligates you and subsequent boards and all the voters and taxpayers in Cobb County to this program. And I think there's too many fish hooks and too many unknowns, including placing too much decision-making regarding property taxes in the future on autopilot. In doing so, it reduces the options to both existing and future boards and the voters relative to property tax increases or maybe potential decreases that may present themselves down the road. And we need to make sure that that option stays open to us. Finally, this is not now or never. As it's been said, this is not a good bill. Most counties, most entities are opting out. There are a few that are opting in, and we have an opportunity to let them opt in, stay in, if you will, and see how it goes. If they have great results, this will come back to the legislature, and they'll allow us to go ahead with the future. So for now, I say it's better the devil we know than the devil we don't know. So I ask you, please opt out of this so that we can keep the status quo. Thank you.
Hillwright, we need HB 581. It's clear that we can't trust our elected officials to be transparent about tax increases. I talked to the author of HB 581. I believe he's a good guy trying to solve problems for all Georgia. He cut a filet to serve. It would have been tasty, but guts and gizzards were thrown in to make a sausage unhealthy for Georgia wallets. HB 581 builds in an automatic tax increase each year that our elected officials won't even have to vote on. So even if home values go down or we suffer from having to cut back during a recession, HB 581 will automatically serve up more meat for the government so the government doesn't have to cut back. The government eats well while the people starves. HB 581 does not cap tax increases. It allows adding up to a 3% sales tax, which the ACCG told you could raise Cobb sales tax to 9%. Unless schools opt out, they can impose a sales tax. Seniors with a senior exemption will still have their property tax exemption, but they will pay school tax through a new sales tax. As one legislator said to me, oops. Then the Georgia coastal governments wanted to tax short-term rentals more. Hey, it's out-of-town people. We can get money from them, no harm. So they eliminated the fair market value account from the income-producing properties to tax income-producing properties more and pass the tax on to customers. That will raise rent on long-term rentals. Do you smell the stench of those gizzards now? I implore you to opt out of HB 581. Let's send it back to the legislature to get the filet we deserve and tell them their current discussion at the Capitol to remove the opt-out provision is a hell no. Thank you.
We'll take our next speaker. All right.
Lee Ramkin, living in Cobb County for 25 years. I didn't know much about HB 581. I know a lot more about it listening to the speakers. The MSPLOST asked for a 1 penny increase in the county sales tax from 6% to 7%. Many people thought, one penny, what is that? And I'm not even going to talk about the 30 years. 1 penny out of 6 pennies is almost a 17% increase in sales tax. HB 581 is asking for a 3 penny increase in sales tax. That's a 50% increase in the sales tax that we have to pay for everything we purchase, everything. Perhaps there's a few exceptions. Can we afford a 50% increase in the sales tax? The public made it clear. Overwhelming vote against MSPLOST. The 1% increase, we overwhelmingly voted against that 1 penny increase. That's 17% increase. And 581 is going to ask us to pay a 50% increase in sales tax? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Please reconsider staying into this HB 581 and vote to step back. Give it a chance to work itself out to see whether or not it truly is going to be beneficial for the citizens of this county. 50% increase in sales tax needs to be thrown out of 581 before anybody should consider accepting it. I can't afford a 50% increase on everything I purchase, and I don't think anybody in this room, including yourselves, can afford a 50% increase in sales tax for everything we purchase. Please reconsider. Thank you.
We'll take the next speaker. Again, recognizing we can have an unlimited number of speakers regarding this matter.
Hello, Commissioners. Christine Rosman. I have to agree with the rest of them, is that we do not need another tax. It seems like another way to just like slide one in there. And, you know, and like Leroy said, is that if we balked at 1% increase, a 3% increase would be something else. And we don't want it. The 50% increase in our tax And it's kind of logical that we wouldn't want it, so please opt out. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Ron Ramsher. I'm in Marietta. I wasn't going to speak, but then I thought I was going to speak because I'm listening to all these people. I am going to retire in 23 months. I will be on a fixed income. I still have a mortgage. And when I look at any extra money that I'm going to have to put out, it really scares me because I already know what I'm going to make at 67. So I'm asking you guys to please opt out, because one day you will be on this side of the podium. I graciously ask you to opt out. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Okay, not seeing any, we'll close the public hearing, and I will ask our commissioners if they have any questions for our presenters. Yes, we'll start with you, Commissioner Gamble, and we'll go down the dais.
Well, I don't know if you want to bring Dante up. Who's going to get to answer this one? So as far as if we opt in is the only time that we would essentially be able to do the flossed. It was my understanding that the flossed was only going to be a 1% sales tax, but I'm hearing from the speakers it's a 3% tax. Can you explain if we opted in is the only way that that percentage and what percentage it would be?
So whether we opt in or opt out, we would be eligible from the county's perspective, but it also depends on what the cities do. So as long as you have an exemption that is more beneficial or equal to that of the exemption for 581, then the county and cities could potentially issue an additional 1% sales tax. It's not 3. So I assume where we're getting for the 3 is the existing Board of Education.
Sorry, let's.
It's an
have
additional
Mr. Thomas come.
1% sales tax, not 3.
Excuse me.
So you have a Board of
Excuse me, I'm
Education of
sorry.
1%.
Excuse me, Bill, at this
Yes.
time, I just asked for the audience. You've had your moment to speak. Please allow our staff to speak. I've captured a lot of your notes, so I will be asking some questions and follow-up. And even if you just make a gesture of a concern, I will jot that and I can ask him, but I just ask that you please not speak over our speakers.
Thank you, Chairwoman. So actually, when those comments came up, actually, we were talking to Dante during the public comment portion of that as well. So there is some confusion over that. It is an additional 1%. Now, we're assuming how they come up with that is the school board's 1%, the county's existing 1% splost, plus an additional 1% flossed is eligible if every participating city opts in or has an existing homestead exemption that is better or equal to that of 581. Steve and Dante, I just want to confirm, do you have any additional comments on that?
No, I agree with everything that you said.
Okay.
Dante represents our Association of County Commissioners of Georgia on this topic.
So can we also clarify as far as on the flossed, whether opting in, opting out, how we proceed to that 1%?
So regardless of whether we opt in or opt out, as long as we're flossed eligible, it does not mean that you have to issue a flossed. That is, by opting in or opting out, it does not obligate you to do so. It just does not take it off the table. So, and again, from the county's perspective, because the general fund floating homestead exemption, whether we opt in or opt out does not change. It's from our understanding that all existing cities within Cobb County have an existing homestead exemption with the exception of one. And that city would have to opt in to keep that on the table for the county as a whole. But even if they do opt in, it does not mean that they have to. We already have an option available to you for tax relief, and it is a lost. And it has been available to us for years. We have not chosen to take advantage of that. We have continued to stay with our model, which is property tax heavy. Both a lost and a flossed are designed to provide property tax relief.
And if the counties and the cities all came together and said, okay, we want to go ahead and do the flossed, it is not something we can automatically do. It goes on to a referendum for the public to vote on, correct?
That is correct.
Also, there was a comment regarding afraid of the values to decrease. I know essentially, if we opted in, that the values would be frozen at the current rate or value. And there's language in the bill that essentially allows for an inflation increase, but not a decrease, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I didn't know if you wanted to, if I'm not saying enough.
No, you're stating it exactly correct, Commissioner. There is no language in there about if real estate values were to decrease. However, I think it's very plausible that the Revenue Commissioner could issue a negative number. That certainly would be possible.
But I thought there was language in the bill that said it could not decrease.
Right, if the value itself would stay and would not go below the base, but I'm just thinking hypothetically speaking, you know, but you are correct, the value stays, and there is no language in there about resetting the base.
Thank you.
Does that conclude your questions? Okay, Commissioner Richardson? No questions? Commissioner Burrow?
So do all the cities and the county have to be on the same page to opt in or opt out, or, because most of the cities that we've heard from are all opting out?
Yeah, sure.
Good evening, everyone. Dante Handel with ACCG. So each local government makes that decision independent of all the other local governments.
Okay.
The county, cities, and schools, any combination can stay in or opt out, and it's a decision for each of those local governing authorities. So
Okay.
it doesn't bind you to do what the others do. Now, Cobb County and several of the cities in Cobb already have an existing float or freeze, which is why Cobb County, for example, can opt out without it affecting eligibility for the floss, because you already have that type of exemption. Cobb County's been offering a more generous homestead exemption than the House Bill 581 exemption for quite some time.
Okay, and with the floss, does that reduce the millage?
Yes, ma'am. So if the county and the cities were to pursue the floss, the way that would work is assuming that the county and all cities within the Cobb County that levy a property tax all have a floating homestead exemption or freeze. Y'all would come together and get an intergovernmental agreement. So the county and at least a city or cities representing more than half of the municipal population in the cities that levy a property tax. That intergovernmental agreement would specify the split, the distribution between the county and the cities, and whatever is collected by each of those local governments the year before gets converted to a millage equivalent, and the general M&O rate is reduced by that millage equivalent. Your rollback rate gets reduced by that millage equivalent. So it's providing property tax relief across the board for all property types.
We should probably have you explain that again.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Right, so whatever.
And let me just back up a little bit, because the acronym FLOST has been used. So if you can even share what a FLOST is, a LOST is, even you used M&O, just
Yes,
most people may know, but if you can help us and just share
Sure.
an actual word.
So the FLOS stands for floating local option sales tax, because it's tied to having a floating homestead exemption or a freeze. You need to have those in order to be eligible for the FLOS. The M&O is your general maintenance and operation millage rate, and the way the FLOS is used is whatever's collected and flossed gets converted to a millage equivalent, and your annual rollback rate, so that number that you need to reduce the millage rate to offset any inflationary gains in the digest and the values, that number gets reduced by whatever you collected in floss the year before. And so that would provide property tax relief to all property types, both homestead properties and all other property types in the county.
But just affect the general fund, not the fire fund.
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
So, okay. Well, that's all the questions I have for now, but I'm sure I'll have some later.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sheffield?
Well, he already answered it with your question regarding the cities and who's opting in and if everyone would have to opt in.
Okay, forgive me, I'm going to go through the notes that I have and particularly speak to some of the questions that were asked. I'm going to do my best for those in the audience, as I was trying to write quickly as you were speaking, and I can't say that all my notes are as legible as they could be. And note that whatever is not answered here tonight, I encourage you to please reach out to us. There are 3 hearings on this, so this is not, if you do not get your questions adequately answered, please feel free to follow up with commissioners, follow up with our staff, and you can again come back to one of the next 2 hearings. With the first matter, and I believe Commissioner Gamble shared this, but why would we opt out? Are we afraid prices would go down?
So if the prices of the homes, the values were to drop, or you had negative inflation, well, I guess these are 2 separate instances. If you have negative inflation, then that means that the base year value doesn't increase. It stays the same for that year, which doesn't hurt the homeowners, keeps it where it is. Now, in any instance in which the fair market value of the home drops beneath that base year value, then the taxpayer pays on that fair market value until the fair market value increases above the base again. And so the simpler way of putting that is it's not going to hurt any of the taxpayers if the fair market value drops below the base, that they're protected.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is again not a continuing conversation with the audience. I will do my best to share the questions that I have noted, and I provided that there will be other opportunities for you to ask your questions directly. Do we think the fire fund will become staggeringly high in the future to not opt out?
So the homestead exemption is a policy decision that shifts some property tax burden from homestead properties, where the owner of the property owns it and actually occupies it as a residence, to all other property types, that'd be industrial, commercial, agricultural, or residential non-homestead. So it's protecting the homeowners and shifting some of their tax burden the other way. If for some reason there wasn't enough funding for that fire fund, then y'all as a Board of Commissioners could certainly increase the millage, but that wouldn't apply just to the homestead properties. It would apply across the board to all the property types. But that's something that you could do currently, whether you had 581 in effect or not.
Okay. This may be a conversation more for the board, as it has to do with housing policy, but there was a question about how can we inflate housing, perhaps housing prices, if we want affordable housing. And I just think there are market forces that are contributing to that. But certainly it is the interest of our board, as we've expressed, to provide affordable housing. I don't know if anyone from the board wants to tackle that question at this time or just receive it. Commissioner Gamble.
Sure. I'll tackle it. And I had quite a lengthy conversation with one of our legislators on this over the weekend. One of my big issues with this House Bill 581 is that it's going to freeze at its current values. Using what's happening in my subdivision, you know, our houses were at 700. They're now selling at 500. Essentially, and this is nothing on Stephen or the work that the tax assessors does, but this bill will freeze those assessments if they're not reassessed this year, because every 3 years we reassess.
Yes, please.
So we would change value as we determine that our fair market value is no longer reflective of the fair market value of what the property could be sold for. So we would adjust either up or down to bring the appropriate value in line with what the fair market value is.
Right. But what I'm concerned, and Dante, correct me if I'm wrong here, is HB 581 locks it in at that fair market value today.
So it would lock your base value at that amount, but you would still be paying on the fair market value in the instance you're describing, because the fair market value would be lower than the base value. If at some point in time your fair market value were to increase and exceed that 700 number, then you'd be protected by that base year value. But that's also true of Cobb County's current freeze.
Right, so like, you know, again, this is public record, so I'm not afraid to say it, you know, we purchased our home for $230,000. So yet under HB 581, we would go to the current value of $525, be locked in, correct?
Wherever your value was in 2024, whatever that final value is, would be the value in 2025. That would be your
Right.
base value.
Right, so I think that's where.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, only for fire. Because you'd be operating under the Cobb County freeze for the M&O.
Okay, so I guess again, here, this is where one of our speakers says the bill is very complicated. You're very correct. It's too complicated. So what I'm hearing from Dante is it doesn't affect our general fund, but it would affect our fire fund. So where I'm concerned, though, I'm a little less concerned knowing that it doesn't affect our general fund now, because again, it would have automatically bumped all of us up to what I consider an artificially high value right now, since we know the market is starting to correct. However, take that to the fire fund. Granted, we don't have our base, in my example, 230. You know, our fire fund is being calculated at the fair market value of 585. I'm just using 585 right now. It's going to get frozen there, and even if the value starts to decrease, I think that is where we're hearing the affordability piece from the homeowners, is because they're concerned that they're going to be paying a higher rate than what their actual fair market value is, because the language in the bill does not allow us to go lower than that 2024 freeze. Okay. Did I do that right? Okay.
So I think I have a couple comments here, if you don't mind, Chair Cupid. But in the instance where your fair market value drops beneath the base, you pay on the fair market value, so the lower of the two numbers. The only way you'd pay, well, in the event that your fair market value later increased above your base year value, then you're protected again by the floating homestead exemption under House Bill 581. So if it drops, you're paying on the fair market value, not the artificially high value. So it won't hurt you, is the short way of saying that. One other comment I did want to make that I'd heard earlier in the meeting was about there being an automatic 3% increase. And so there are two things I'd like to say on that. One, there's nothing in House Bill 581 as it passed that says 3%. It was in an early draft of that bill, but in the final version that passed, there is no 3% language. What it is an inflation rate determined by the Department of Revenue Commissioner. The Department of Revenue has been promulgating rules and regulations to select an inflation rate at CPIU, which is Consumer Price Index, all urban consumers, government inflation. So that would be the figure that you'd be using. So it's not 3%. Over the last 10 years or so, it's averaged 3%, but if you were to exclude the COVID years, it's closer to 1.5%.
But is it capped at 3%,
No, ma'am. So
the CPI?
if CPI were greater than 3%, let's say for argument's sake it were 4%, then your property cannot increase by more than 4%. It doesn't mandate that it increase by 4%. That's just the maximum increase that you could experience in any given year. But if it's less, let's say that CPI were 0.5%, for example, then that 0.5% is the maximum increase that you could experience in any given year.
Okay.
So it'll change each year.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just taking some notes before I ask you my next question. That dovetails into this next question. I'm going to repeat the same question that you asked. There were concerns that as House Bill 581 was altered, that it facilitates special interests inclusive of the automated property tax increase that you just addressed, that there is no automated property tax increase with the bill as it has been approved. There is also a concern that there is no cap on property taxes.
There's no cap on the millage rate. So just like Cobb County has a freeze on the M&O, this is applying something very similar in this case to the fire fund, and that's affecting the value. So it's changing how much the value can increase in any given year. So let's say that inflation were 3%, and the property doubled in value, so the value's increased 100%. That taxpayer only experiences a 3% increase instead of 100%. So this is a law designed to protect the homeowners from these very large increases that we've seen, which are driven by market forces.
And again, there are a number of jurisdictions that do not have the homestead exemption that Cobb County has.
Yes, ma'am. I think there are about 30 counties that have some sort of float or freeze, Cobb being one of those 30. The other 129 do not.
Okay. Yes, please go right ahead.
So while using this example where he said essentially the home value would, fair market value would double, but it would only go up by the inflationary. If you do not have the homestead, you would still get that 100% increase. And this is where I think the constituents are concerned about those who rent single-family homes or properties or apartments, condominiums, anything that is for rent.
Sure.
They are still going to be hit with that tremendous increase, which again impacts affordability.
Thank you. That dovetails to the next question that the speaker said, that it would remove the fair market tax on rental properties, which would provide less transparency. Can you address this
So
matter?
the floating homestead exemption is protecting homesteaded properties where the owner of the property occupies that property as a residence. It's not protecting any other property type. But in the absence of House Bill 581, you still have a system in which those other properties are not protected against that increase. So whether y'all stay in or opt out, the renters in that situation are not going to be covered by a homestead exemption because it only targets homestead properties.
Okay. Thank you. All right, forgive me, I'm going to try to read through these notes to call out what the question may be. There were some questions or assertions about transparency when there are tax increases. That would be more budgetary or question for the commissioners when we set our millage every year. That's just something for us to be mindful of, that desire for transparency. The speaker also asked a question with respect to real estate companies that are purchasing properties in the county and inflating home values, which is a practice that has been occurring, and it is something that a lot of local governments have been bringing to the attention of the state. However, this is a matter of state law, not local law, and so we are limited in what we can do in preventing that practice. But no, it has been articulated on numerous occasions, because I've sat in those rooms where that has been discussed. I don't know, Dante, if you would like to add, or if any of our staff members would like to add to that.
I would have two comments in response to those questions. So the first one, I guess, thinking about transparency. None of the laws have changed surrounding the county or any other local government taking a full rollback. If the local government does not do a full rollback, they still need to advertise that as a tax increase to the public and hold the 3 public hearings. So that remains entirely unchanged. The only difference is that instead of calculating the full value of an increase, it's only the amount that the taxpayer experiences, whatever that inflation rate is. If the inflation rate's 3%, then that's the number that gets factored into that rollback calculation. As far as special interests buying up the property, that's a very difficult thing to curtail, although there was some language in House Bill 581 surrounding the appeal process where it makes it more difficult for those companies buying up all the properties to get a near automatic lock, which was shifting a lot of their property tax burden to the rest of the folks in the community.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yep, there's been a general assertion, and I think a number in agreement that the bill language is confusing. Another question or comment with respect to the 3% sales tax being a regressive sales tax. We've already acknowledged where the 3% came from. And again, there was a lot of discussion with Commissioner Gamble's initial question with respect to that additional 1% that could have been added should we decide to do a floating local option sales tax. possible impact that could have, but that we are not making a decision with respect to that with the opt-in or opt-out.
Right. There's nothing in the bill that forces y'all to pursue the floss, but Cobb County retains eligibility on its end, whether or not the county stays in or opts out. And should the county and the cities pursue that floss, it will go to local referendum where the voters will have final say.
Okay. I just have a clarifying question. This was an assertive statement made, but does opting in obligate us to stay in House Bill 581?
So the county and every other local government, cities and schools are all automatically participating in House Bill 581 when the law took effect as of January 1st. So the decision is whether or not to opt out.
Okay, thank you.
But if you don't take any action, you're automatically in.
That's a good point to share. No action, automatically opted in. Again, an assertion with respect to this being an automatic tax increase, we stated that this does not provide or does not make provision for an automatic tax increase.
Correct. There's no automatic tax increase. The county would still need to advertise it as a tax increase if it were not to take the full rollback. And so the taxpayers would be notified and have the public hearings.
Okay, this may be related to the 3%, but I have an assertion made that opting in or this general program or House bill could raise Cobb County sales tax to 9%.
So under House Bill 581, the maximum combined state and local sales tax rate is 9%, but not automatically because of the floss. Cobb would have to pass three separate.
Can you restate what you just stated?
Yeah, so the maximum combined state and local sales tax rate is 9%. The state has a sales tax rate of 4%. The maximum number of local pennies is 5, and that's pulling from certain buckets. So you have a 2% cap on local sales taxes with 3 separate buckets of exemptions.
Okay, that's.
So one of those is E-Splost, which Cobb does have. Another one is a transportation penny, so this would be one of the T-Splost types. And in Cobb County, the only penny eligible from the third bucket would be the flossed penny.
Okay.
Yep. Other than that, Cobb County's current SPLOST applies against the 2% cap, and if Cobb were to pursue either a lost or a host penny, so local option sales tax or homestead option sales tax, that would take the place of the last potential
Okay.
penny.
So the maximum tax rate could be 9% if we were to take advantage of all of those.
If Cobb were to take advantage of all of them, and each one of those taxes would go separately to referendum to the voters.
Okay, can you repeat that again, please?
Yep. So any additional penny of sales tax would go to local referendum in Cobb County where the voters would have the final say.
That wouldn't be automatic with this
No, ma'am.
House bill?
It is definitely not automatic.
Okay. All right, those are all the questions that I have. Commissioners, yes, I do so.
I think there was one other question that was missed related to the appeal process. It was mentioned that opting in made it a little bit harder to appeal, but I understand that the intent of the bill was to make it easier to appeal. So just curious if there.
Whether Cobb County stays in or opts out will have no bearing on the appeal process. The only change that I can think of off the top of my head, and correct me if you disagree with this, Stephen, but is that 3-year lock language that I was mentioning where those institutional investors were taking advantage. It's changed where a taxpayer, whichever taxpayer, needs to win their appeal by getting some sort of value reduction or they don't get the automatic lock for the next 2 years, and that's to prevent that abuse.
Got it, okay. Because, it's the bullet point here, enhancement of an individual property owner's rights when objecting to and appealing an increase. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any? Yes, Commissioner Gambrill.
Just to kind of piggy off what you were just discussing, Chair, going back to Dante to the 9%, the loss, the host, and essentially each of those would be put on referendum for the voters to decide. That option to us doesn't change if we opt in or opt out. I mean, we can still do future SPLOST, we can still do future MSPLOST, or if we want to go to a lost or a host, we still have the opportunity to do that. if we opt in or opt out.
Everything you stated is absolutely correct.
Okay, so from the board's perspective, again, if we want to change the way we tax, we still have that flexibility in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioner have questions? Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your presentation and for answering questions. Thank you so much for our audience members who were a part of this presentation and who asked questions that were very good questions that I'm sure a lot of our other citizens may have. Again, we have 2 more public hearings on this same matter. You're invited to come back and ask the same questions or additional questions. But if you had any questions that you are looking for an answer for before the next hearing, please do not hesitate to reach out to your commissioners or to any of our staff members that are engaged in this, which would include our finance director, Bill Volkman, and our tax assessor, Stephen White. Well, excuse me, support services director, Stephen White. With that, we've been here for almost 2 hours. I'm going to go ahead and have us take, why don't we I'm trying to see what's reasonable. I would say 5. I don't know if we'll get back. 5. We'll come back at 8:55 for the remainder of this meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. It is 8:55. Appreciate all of the discussion we had with respect to our first public hearing regarding the possible House Bill 581 impact to Cobb County. And Commissioner Burrell had a helpful comment that I thought may be good to share with our communications director publicly, as we've just fielded a number of questions. Yep.
Is he here?
No, but I see
Okay.
his second in command is here. Hi,
Okay.
Shelley.
Shelley. Yes, we were thinking that since there's so much confusion and so many questions that, and I talked to Stephen White, there is a frequently asked question on the ACCG website that we can put a link on our website.
We actually have a... Excuse me, why don't you mind just, yes, coming to the mic so we can all hear you? Thank you. And just state your name.
Shelley Widener, Communications Manager. There's actually a block on the homepage that says H Bill 581, Frequently Asked Questions and More Information. That link that you're referencing is in that article as well.
Okay.
And we'll be updating the FAQs probably with Stephen when with
On the county website.
Yep.
And then Stephen White said also he will be at all of the, of course, our public hearings, but also the chairwoman's town halls, I think with the exception of tomorrow night because he had a conflict. But then we could also email him directly, or maybe communications could set up an email for folks to ask questions as well.
Okay.
Right.
To email.
Thank you. Hi, Rob.
Hey, I'm sorry, nobody told me there was a meeting tonight.
Yeah, right.
We have with Stevens House, we put together a HB 581 page that is on the front page. It does have those FAQs, I believe, linked on there, but we can put together an email address and get the questions all put together.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
All right. We are now concluded with our public hearing portion, and now we are at public comment. Well, Bill can let us know how many
Yes.
speakers we have before we get started?
We have a full sheet.
Okay.
However, I suspect some of them might, I don't see some of them that signed up. They may have
Okay.
participated in the first portion.
Okay.
And as the board provides a podium for public comment, it's appropriate to review some of those related meeting rules. Please state your name and if you're speaking on behalf of an organization. All comments should be made to the commission as a body and addressed through the chair. Public comment is not a dialogue with the board, but an opportunity for speakers to provide their comments to the board. Comments should not be slanderous. The board encourages, regardless of the topic, for the audience to be respectful and courteous to all the speakers. Everyone attending this meeting should be given others the right to both listen and to be heard by treating each other with civility. Excuse me, statements made during the public comments portion do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the board or the administration of Cobb County government. And as was referenced earlier in tonight's meeting, there is a timer on the podium to keep track of your 3 minutes. First public speaker is Lance Lamberton.
Good evening. My name is Lance Lamberton, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Cobb Taxpayers Association. The most important point I want to make tonight is to reiterate that the people of Cobb County spoke loud and clear that they don't want an increase in our sales tax to fund an expansion of mass transit. Yet based upon the comments made by some transit tax supporters, I get the impression they did not hear what was said. Ms. Cupid, you are quoted as saying, "We recalibrate. This is not an issue that dies today." No. On the contrary, Ms. Cupid, the people of Cobb County have driven a stake into the heart of mass transit expansion, and it appears you are deaf to the voice of the people when you make remarks like that. Part of the reason that your referendum suffered such a humiliating defeat is the hubris of smugly assuming that you know what's best for us without seeking any input from those who you know would have opposed it. We would have loved to meet with you and county staff to discuss alternatives to the transit tax that you put on the ballot. But to my knowledge, no such outreach was ever made. But I'll tell you one thing. We are not going to put our heads in the sand and claim that serious transportation issues do not exist in Cobb. Traffic congestion and mobility challenges for our most vulnerable citizens immediately comes to mind. For the former, vital road projects long delayed would help. And I believe the free market will come up with solutions because there's a lot of money to be made to alleviate this seemingly intractable problem. As for those with mobility challenges, why not take the $29 million you spend annually to subsidize Cobb Link and instead partner with rideshare services to provide transportation to those who meet certain financial criteria? As for potential liability issues, have users of the service sign liability waivers. Surely our public would be better served in this way than with the current inefficient service we now provide. This is just one of many ideas we would like to explore with you if you are willing to have a dialogue. Just call, text, or email me and I'll take it from there. And while I still have a little bit more time, I implore the board to end DEA in Cobb County once and for all. We spend thousands on consultants to determine how much we are in compliance when the only criteria in hiring should be merit-based and not on one's race, gender, or sexual orientation. Thank you.
The next public speaker is Gary Henderson.
Good evening again, Commissioners. I spoke earlier on one of the options, one of the things I wanted to talk about, which was HB 581, and we pretty well covered that. But I will say one thing relative to the recent conversation. Perhaps in the linkage that we're talking about on the webpage, we could put something to where it could link directly to the entire bill so that people could read it for themselves. You can probably do that through Lexis or something, I'm not really sure. But it would be beneficial for people who still have questions and want to think about, is this an interpretation or is this written verbatim? You know, I think that would be beneficial for folks to be able to do that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the Uniform Development Code, or UDC. I think that we should abandon that. UDC transfers decision-making on zoning matters to staff, which adds to the power of the administrative state, which is not what most of us want to do. And since staff is not elected, this amounts to abdicating authority to them without commensurate responsibility to the voters. You folks are the only ones that are responsible to the voters. So if under UDC, if a zoning proposal complies with land use and zoning, staff could pass it without consideration of what the neighbors or their concerns might be. I think it's your job to weigh the merits of staff recommendations on zoning and land use and hear the concerns of the people that would be affected by that and adjudicate accordingly. That's what I think your job is. So I'm asking, please don't push this down to the staff and abdicate what we elected our commissioners to do, which is make sure that zoning and land use benefits everybody in Cobb County. Thank you.
The next public speaker is Christine Rosman.
Commissioners, Chairwoman Christine Rosman. I think I have gotten a reputation of being kind of an alarmist, and that I, put a spotlight on you guys. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? Okay. But I think that, all you'd have to do is really talk to people in Pacific Palisades and say, are you happy with who's been writing policy, who's been managing your town? And I think that they would say, hell no. I wish I would have shown up. I wish I would have asked. I wish I would have been more involved, because now everything that I have is gone. And this hasn't happened yet to Cobb County. We have 2 pretty common sense commissioners, and we have 3 commissioners that tend to vote in a very liberal way and for policies that do not reflect Cobb County. And I feel for those people. But I bet every one of them would say, if I could do it differently, I would have gotten involved. And I think people have no idea what's really going on, because that's why we keep saying, hey, this is what's going on, wake up. How about let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the ripple effect of what's happened with the home rule fiasco. Okay? So a said commissioner, if you would have possibly been the candidate and won, you would have been long gone. But we, the taxpayers, are paying all this extra money for this lawfare. 3 judges have said, home rule is bogus. Stop it. It's unconstitutional. But it's like, no, let's do it again. Let's see, what are the repercussions? How much does this cost us? People don't know who their commissioners, which districts, still don't know. They look on the Secretary of State, look on the board, Cobb County elections, totally different. They don't even know. So you've caused chaos, and it has been despicable of what has happened, and we're a freaking laughingstock. Or is this just so that you can have your majority up here and go ahead and push through on UDC, ADU, stormwater tax, make sure you get that sanitation thing going? It's pathetic. It's pathetic what you've put us through.
The next public speaker is Sam Foster.
Hi, Sam Foster. Throughout the past 2 months in Cobb County, we've been seeing a surge in pedestrian deaths and injuries throughout the entire county. It's been really disheartening to see. And sadly, on January 16th, about 2 weeks ago, we saw another incident in line with that trend. Alyssa Stringer, age 19, was standing in front of at the intersection in front of the East KSU parking deck. And while she was standing there at the intersection, doing nothing wrong, a car made a U-turn in front of her, and another car collided with it. And sadly, the car making the U-turn was then pushed into her, and as a result of her getting hit, her leg had to be amputated. There's obviously going to be a lot of medical expenses occurred with that. It's a very traumatic injury, so there's a GoFundMe up. If you are willing and able to donate, I definitely encourage you to do so. This not only comes against the backdrop of what I just talked about, but this also comes against the backdrop of the history of this intersection. I looked up GDOT's data on all the crashes throughout Georgia within a certain time frame, and apparently from the time period of 2018 to 2023, there were 70 crashes at this intersection. Around half of them were angled crashes, like T-bones, and 2 of them were pedestrian crashes. 2 lines that apply to this road where this intersection happened also come to mind when I looked at the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, which is a good thing, and in the executive summary, there are 2 lines that describe what factors lead to pedestrian crashes. And these 2 lines are, more than 90% of serious injury and fatal pedestrian crashes occurred on roads with posted speed limits of 45 miles an hour or higher, check. More than 75% of severe pedestrian crashes occurred on roads with 4 or more lanes, check. So with all the things we've been seeing, all of the different studies we've done, I think it's clear at this point that these aren't accidents. These are a result of road design, and until we start to address it from that perspective, these things will never change. I understand that the Cobb DOT is investigating the situation, which I'm happy about, but there's still more work to do. Whenever one of these incidents happens, we need to investigate it, which we are doing. We need to get the community together. We need to get experts together and community members who understand the area. And then from that meeting, we need to come out with a report. And that report would list out what happened, how we could have prevented it from happening, short-term actions and long-term actions. And I say short-term actions because oftentimes, and I know everybody in this room cares about safety, oftentimes we say we care about safety, but the process of getting there takes years. And people are getting hurt today, and the longer we wait to do these things, where we could do something with maybe traffic cones or bollards right now that could have a similar effect, more people are getting put in danger where they otherwise would not be. So we're going to be going through that process, and I hope we can work with the county as we do that. Thank you.
Kathy Slow. Tracy Stevenson.
Good evening, commissioners again. It's said that you can't beat a dead horse. Well, apparently you can gut it, you can draw it and quarter it and drag it through this room. I don't think there's any question that we're tired of this conversation. I think there's two different conversations, and I've said it. Ms. Sheffield's seat, I understand why she's sitting in it. It makes complete sense. Ms. Richardson, I believe that, as the earlier speaker said, you would have left us high and dry on January 3rd if you could have won that election to the House. So you know how you feel. I don't. I'm not going to presume to. The problem I have with all of it, and I always have, is money and time. We've wasted at least $3 million on this action. One thing that the chair never responds to, and I know this isn't a dialogue with the chair, but one simple step could have been taken to avoid all the lawfare. All we had to do was change our charter, go to the legislature, and have them approve it, which is in accordance with state law. Your seat would have been safe. We could have saved $3 million plus, and it would have been over. But instead, we beat this horse to absolute death. Okay, that's the bad news. The good news is, I really want to know everybody in here that says, no, let's do opt out of HB 581. Show of hands. An unusual bipartisan agreement. I'm so happy to see it. I think that what I've read in the papers and understand, I believe that the board is leaning that way. I hope that you do. There's just too many questions and not enough answers. Thank you.
Matt Stegall.
Hello, Commissioners. Good evening. My name is Matt Segal. I live in District 1, and I serve on the Transit Advisory Board. Sam mentioned a little bit about this earlier when he spoke, but the end of November, December was one of the deadliest times on the roadways for pedestrians. On November 26th, and then I'm reading this from a Fox 5 article that was published December 12th, 2024, spike in pedestrian crashes alarms Cobb County Police. And so on November 26th, a pedestrian was hit and killed at the intersection of Austell Road and Orange Hill Drive. November 30th, a pedestrian was hit and killed trying to cross Pat Mill Road near the intersection with Benson Avenue. On December 5th, a pedestrian was killed on Cobb Parkway in Ackworth. On December 6th, a pedestrian was killed while trying to cross Austell Road at the intersection with Hurt Road. Then on December 7th, a pedestrian was hit and seriously injured in a crash on Sandtown Road near Westside Drive. That is a span of a couple of weeks, and that was 5 either death or serious injuries. I believe 3 more occurred later on in December as well. And so if there is ever a time when that many deaths occurred, if there is a serial killer on the loose who had caused 5 deaths in a span of 2 weeks in our community, it would be in a lot more media than just one media source. It would be on the front page, local, national, you name it. But yet, and we'd have all of our public safety resources on the lookout, everything trying to stop this. But because it's death caused by cars, I'm thankful that it at least got some publicity, but we just excuse it. And, and it is a public health crisis to the point where it's affecting everyone. And it's also affecting our insurances. We wonder why our insurances are going up all the time. Well, it's because and it's not just pedestrians. It is the amount of vehicular violence on our roads is continuing to go up and up. And there's someone that just has to be done to look at solutions and look at ways to make the roads safer for all users. And it ties in also, we passed a 2009 complete streets policy that, we're supposed to look at every road and everything that we do around here in transportation for all users of the road, including transit users, bicyclists, and pedestrians. But I do predominantly drive around the county, but there's so many places where the sidewalk goes out, and and I see the sidewalk goes out, there's no shoulder. There's just death traps all over the county. And I think that whether it's a task force, whether it's some type of group, we need to do something that looks at all of these injuries and deaths and finds a way to stop it. Thank you.
Next public speaker is Donald Barth.
Good evening, ladies. Donald Barth. I don't know where to start. I heard more double talk out of that chair tonight. Double talk BS. Bullshit. Go back and listen to what you said. Go back to the beginning and hear all you said. Well, I thought, I did this, I did that. As an attorney, you said there was some gentleman rules and it was done this way, but there was a law. There was a constitutional law in place, and you thought you were just going to walk around it. What kind of attorney does that? Oh, the kind that keeps running up the law. Poor old Bill came right out there and looked like a cat. He stood there and he said, she can't serve on this board because she doesn't live in the district. That is in our enabling legislation. Commissioner Sheffield, you win. You are in the district legally because you do go by the enabling legislation. So tonight, how can we say that enabling legislation kept you in and kept her in? It can't work that way because enabling legislation says that this person over here has to live in the district. When you left the chair from January 1st to January 13th, you say we were without a commissioner. I say I've been without one for 2 years. And I can prove that. I would love you to get your bus and come riding over there. I want to show you what her neglect has done on the county side of Powers Ferry. She's a con. If you don't have your hand up her butt, moving her mouth, where are we going to go with this? She's got no backbone. You use the word enabling legislation tonight over and over. It says clearly she cannot perform the duty because she does not live in the area. She doesn't live in the district. Bill, I'm quoting you. I can't do it anymore. You could come up there and fix this, but y'all are not because I know where you get it from. Shrug your shoulders up there. I really don't give a damn. If you hadn't figured that out a long time ago, I don't like when you pull this crap. You know what the law reads. There was never anything. You get the enabling legislation. You win because you never had a problem. You were always in because the enabling legislation said so.
Mr. Barth, you're out of time. The next speaker is Craig Harfoot.
Good evening. My name's Craig Harfoot. Please vote no on the UDC. It's it's part of why all these entities are buying up all the houses in Cobb County and making it unaffordable. Until we address that, I mean, I sent you articles on Spain because they're going to raise property tax double on foreign buyers of property. I mean, there are similar things that can be done state and local, but there's no will for that, I don't think. But what I wanted to say, and I didn't get to say it in the past, you held a general election using the correct state maps to get Commissioner Burrell elected. And there were other people elected in that cycle. And then that is the glaring thing. You used it until you didn't use it. And that's where none of your arguments hold water up there that say that you should still be sitting in that seat right now. Because then you brought the lawfare suits, and then you held a special election a primary election using the wrong maps. We spent all that money. The judges knocked it down. You know what the law says now, and you should graciously get up. Now you took it to a judge. You didn't do it right away in December because that judge only has 30 days to make a ruling. And anything you vote on in this time frame is illegal because you have no standing. And I had my cousin who's an attorney in another state, and she read everything, and she said, she told me this. And I think any attorney worth his salt would know that. And so please, just do the right thing. I know you want to run for other stuff in the future. You didn't get where you wanted to go in Congress, but I think maybe you should live a while and understand how tough life is before you go at it again, because I think this will follow you. And Governor Kemp, he snatched out some representatives. I don't know why they haven't done anything about some of the people on the board that don't follow the state constitution. It's like, he's looking for another office. But, certainly the county attorney, the sheriff, anybody could say, come on off there.
Mr. Harfoot, your time's up. Hill Wright's the next speaker.
All right. What's the rush with the Unified Development Code? Chair Cupid is conducting town halls during a critical election period coinciding with candidate forums. This blatantly disrespects our community and constitutes a clear attempt at election interference. Chair Cupid is advancing the UDC before it's formally presented to the board in a work session. I must caution everyone, you cannot trust what you hear at these town halls. In December 2023, a town hall showcased the UDC's supposed progress. We had attended meetings with the consultant before the town hall where our feedback was received under the guise of genuine consideration, only to discover it was a facade, just something to repeat back to us to win approval, yet it was not what was written. I read excerpts from your own UDC text that directly contradicted what the development director presented to the town hall audience. If you intend to completely overhaul zoning codes under the pretext of modernization, stop trying to force it upon us. We did not request this UDC, nor did we ask for the disrespectful Cupid-style rollout during an election when the community is already preoccupied. The entire progress surrounding this UDC is just shameful. It's dishonest. We deserve better, Chair Cupid. Where did our $500,000 go?
Excuse me, Hill, just hold on for 1 second. We've had a number of electronic interruptions. Whoever has that device, can you please help control that? All right, go ahead, Hill.
Okay.
Thank you.
Where did our $500,000 go? It's not even half finished, and you want to push this forward. The spokesman for the ACCG is talking around our comments, misleading instead of informing. He said there is a tax increase each year for inflation, yet he says there's no automatic tax increase. He says there's a cap on the tax with HB 581, then he says, but you can still raise the millage rate. He falsely claimed there was no elimination of fair market cap on income-producing property. I do not think he's giving you correct information. I request any answer given by him or anyone else must cite the bill language and explain the changes to Georgia law within the answer. I believe if he does, he will not have the same answer. CobbTaxRevolt.com has a marked up copy of HB 581. HB 581 is just too confusing for citizens of Georgia. It's something that just needs to be rejected. They need to go back and redo it, and they need to leave all the crap out of it and fix the real problem, which was basically making your votes for tax increases transparent. That's what they're really trying to do. All this other stuff shouldn't have been in there to begin with. Thank you.
The next speaker is Tim Parson. No further speakers.
Thank you. We are now at the consent agenda portion of this meeting, where we vote on a number of items together. Those items have been scrolling on the screen prior to this meeting and will scroll on the screen following the meeting. Commissioners, there have been some revisions to the consent agenda minutes. You should have a copy of that on a pink sheet. Those are the only changes that I have. Commissioners, do you have any other comments with respect to the consent agenda before the motion? With that, Commissioners, I move that we approve the matters on our consent agenda as they have been revised, and to authorize execution of the necessary documents by the appropriate county personnel.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Commissioners. We are now at the regular portion of our agenda, and the first matter we have, or the first subject matter we have, is transportation.
Good evening again. DOT has 13 items on the regular tab for your consideration tonight. And our first item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve resurfacing contract 2025-1, Local Roads Northwest, with Bartow Paving Company Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $7,338,979.50 for resurfacing of county-maintained streets, project number B2916. Authorize a corresponding budget transaction and further authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Gambrill.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve resurfacing contract 2025-2, Local Roads Northeast with Baldwin Paving Company Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $6,745,334.10 for resurfacing of county-maintained streets, project number B2917. Authorize a corresponding budget transaction and further authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Richardson.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve resurfacing contract 2025-3, Local Roads South with Triple R Paving and Construction LLC in an amount not to exceed $5,219,100.50 for resurfacing of county-maintained streets, project number B2918. Authorize a corresponding budget transaction and further authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Richardson.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve a memorandum of agreement with the Georgia Department of Transportation for preliminary engineering oversight of Oakdale Road Complete Streets Bridge Replacement, Cobb County Project number B2449. Authorize payment of a preliminary engineering oversight fee to the Georgia Department of Transportation in the amount of $10,000. authorize the corresponding budget transaction, and further authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Sheffield.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve a project framework agreement with the Georgia Department of Transportation for preliminary engineering design of Oakdale Road Complete Streets Bridge Replacement. Project B 2449, authorize the corresponding budget transactions, and further authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Sheffield.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve project number B 2742, task order number 2, to the 2022 master task order contract with RS&H Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $151,837.13 for engineering design of Schaefer Road Sidewalk Phase 2, authorize the corresponding budget transactions, and further authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Richardson.
So moved.
Second. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve resurfacing contract 2025-4 countywide major thoroughfares local maintenance and improvement grant with C.W. Matthews Contracting Company Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $9,498,394.42 for resurfacing of county-maintained streets, project number B2919. Authorize the corresponding budget transactions, and further authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve an indemnification and hold harmless agreement with the Georgia Department of Transportation required to obtain an encroachment permit for Veterans Memorial Highway at Buckner Road traffic signal, project number B2575, and authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Sheffield.
We are getting closer and closer, Drew. I'm
We're
so
getting there.
excited. I'm so excited by this. So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. And our next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve a utility relocation agreement with Georgia Power Company in an amount not to exceed $55,998 for preliminary engineering and relocation of facilities on South Gordon Road at Pisgah Road, project number B2310. Authorize a corresponding budget transaction, and further authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Sheffield.
So moved.
Second.
All right, is there any further discussion?
Just a quick question. Drew, I thought this was the location of the traffic circle.
It is.
It is? Okay.
In the second paragraph, intersection improvements at the intersection will include construction of
The
a roundabout.
roundabout,
This
okay.
is specific to the utility relocations associated with that project.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
All right, is there any further discussion? Okay. All right, we'll call the question. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners authorize procurement of closed-circuit television cameras and mounting hardware at a total cost not to exceed $265,599 for incident management CCTV cameras, project number B2521, utilizing available state contracts, and further authorize the corresponding budget transactions.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Southern Road and Bridge LLC in an amount not to exceed $1,960,943 for Cobb Parkway Pedestrian Bridge, project number B2443. Approve supplemental agreement number 1 to said contract in an amount not to exceed $100,000. Authorize the corresponding budget transactions, and further authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Richardson.
So moved.
Second. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve a memorandum of agreement with Cumberland Community Improvement District for enhancements and maintenance of Cobb Parkway Pedestrian Bridge, project number B2443. authorize the corresponding budget transactions, and further authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Richardson.
So moved.
I'll second. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. And our final item this evening is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Chatfield Contracting Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $231,781.09 for drainage system repairs on Oak Drive, project number B22159. Authorize the corresponding budget transactions and further authorize the chairwoman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Burrow.
Motion to approve.
Second. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. I believe that takes us to our second public comment.
There are no speakers.
Thank you, Bill. That now takes us to the appointment tab, and I have two announcements. The first one is to announce Commissioner Burrow as the vice chair for 2025. And thank you, Commissioner Richardson, for serving last year. And I'm also announcing the appointment of Commissioner Gambrell to the Airport Advisory Board, as our McCollum Airport now sits in District 1. And thank you, Commissioner Burrow, for your service on that last year. That now takes us to our Commissioner's public address. And once the slides are up, Commissioner Gambrell, you may begin.
Cobb County 4-H earned first place at the Georgia 4-H Cotton Bowl and Consumer Judging Contest last month. The team members achieved Master 4-H'er status thanks to their outstanding consumer decision-making skills. For more information about Cobb County 4-H youth development programs or to enroll your child, you can contact Chloe Patterson at chloe.patterson1@uga.edu or call 770-528-4070. And lastly, tomorrow, the Lunar New Year begins on January 29th, marking the start of the Year of the Snake. This year symbolizes transformation, insight, and fresh beginnings. Here's to embracing thoughtful actions and making strategic changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll now go on to Commissioner Richardson.
Are the slides in? Oh, okay. They are not in. Well, I'll just read off the notes here, but we have our applications that are open, and of course, you can go to d2cobb.com/giveback. Community Huddle this Thursday, and what we'll also be just focusing in on is, I know from constituents, I've heard a lot of questions, things about how what's going on in DC impacts, or different executive orders that have been passed, how that affects us on the ground. So I will answer questions around that as well, as to the best of my ability. There's also candidate forums coming up for the election that is underway, and that will determine the successor for this seat and for District 4 as well. So there will be a forum. You can register for that, and that will take place both tomorrow, on Wednesday and on Thursday. And then there is a youth town hall on mental health as well on February 6th. So please enjoy, and those are all of my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll go on to Commissioner Burrow.
Last week, we cut the ribbon on the Acres Mill ramp at 75 to 85 Acres Mill. This will be a crucial access point for efficiently and safely connecting people to and from our community to the express lanes. So congratulations. A lot of partners were there from CID, Cumberland CID, even Commissioner Ott. Congratulations to Andy Height, Captain Andy Height, retiring from Cobb County PD after 28 years of service to the Cobb County Police Department. We wish you all the best, and we will miss you. Saturday night at the Cobb Chamber Annual Dinner, our own Dr. Jackie McMorris, County Attorney, received the Mac Henderson Award, and she had her whole family there. So it was a great honor that was bestowed on her, and we couldn't be more proud. You heard tonight our first public hearing on HB 581. There will be 2 more public hearings at our February BOC meetings, the 11th and the 25th. And then the chairwoman, I'm sure she will be announcing her town halls that will also address this. And the one in District 3 will be on February 12th, a Wednesday, at the Northeast Cobb Community Center, 880 Shaw Road, from 7 to 9. And then this is our contact information to reach me and my assistant, Kimberly Jorgensen. For those of you who aren't sure whose district you're still in, if you want to receive my newsletter, go to cobbcounty.org/Burrell. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll now go on to Commissioner Sheffield.
Thank you, Chair. District 4 news and updates. Join the Cool Kids Committee for an inspiring and creative evening of goal setting and manifesting your dreams at their Vision Board party on February 1st. The After Hours edition is an exclusive event for adults to relax, connect, and focus on their aspirations in a supportive environment. The organization is also accepting donations for gently used prom dresses and women dress shoes. Both events will take place at the Austell Market Suites located at 5000 Austell Powder Springs Road in Austell. Join the Cobb County Sheriff's Office for their upcoming Citizens Academy. Explore the world behind the badge, gain firsthand knowledge of the Sheriff's Office, and engage with your local law enforcement. Scan the QR code to apply for an unforgettable experience in community partnership and education. You must meet the following criteria: be 18 years or older, possess a valid government identification, complete an application submitted to the Sheriff's Community Engagement Unit, and successfully complete a background investigation. The last day to register is February 21st. And finally, attention, District 4, a special election has been scheduled for February 11th, stemming from a court ruling on a lawsuit related to District 2. While the boundary lines for District 4 have shifted slightly, I encourage you to visit your voter page at mvp.sos.ga.gov to confirm whether you're within the new District 4 boundaries. Special elections often see low turnout, so it's critical that you show up and make your voice heard. Let's ensure our community is represented. Do not miss this opportunity to vote. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I do have some slides for today, which is atypical. The first one is to share some opportunities for the public to be engaged as we set policy here in the county. And it's through the All In initiative that I started when I was first elected. And seeing how things have transpired over the past 4 years, I think we have opportunity to reset as a board and how we engage the public in setting policy. So there are different ways to be involved, inclusive of serving on any of our boards that I appoint positions to. I'll also be setting up some committees that focus on areas of our strategic plan. And if you have any interest in being a part of any of those or just have general ideas, I just ask that you please visit that page. The strategic plan is the focus of that All In initiative, and I think rightfully so. We've had thousands of residents, and we've had our staff and many of our stakeholders participate in setting a strategic plan for this county. And the mission statement that we have adopted is to make Cobb the best place to live and work through an efficient, effective, and responsive government that delivers quality services. Our vision, which is on the next page, is for Cobb County to be thriving, innovative, and a safe community that enhances quality of life for the well-being of all. And for us to ensure that happens, again, we have a strategic plan to help guide us in getting there, And it's important for me to ensure that as we've asked you to participate and tell us what should drive our county and what the vision is, that we do the work to take us there. So again, I look forward to us making sure that this is an active part of how we're setting policy and moving the county forward, and encourage your participation. I will talk about this over a number of community meetings that I am having across the county. And following those community meetings, we will then start having meetings that focus on those strategic outcome areas that are in our strategic plan and are also listed on the next slide. Excuse me. Let's go to the next slide and then we'll come back to this. Thank you. The strategic plan's outcome areas, again, as identified through that community-wide effort, include community development, economic development, effective and efficient government, housing and livability, infrastructure, mobility and transportation, public safety, and quality of life. Through that strategic planning process, if we go back through to the prior slide, is to be achieved through these core values of our organization. Commitment, to be committed to moving our county forward, to diversity, to bringing together people from across our county from different walks of life to achieve our goals. Integrity, to establish trust and to strengthen trust in those who are hoping to move the county forward, and doing that through effective and efficient service. And also high ethical standards and teamwork, recognizing that no one person can do this alone and that it takes all of us. So again, we'll be doing work to move that forward. Forgive me, Commissioners, I am over time. And I'm just going to ask that you entertain just one more thing. We do have community meetings coming up. These are dates. And the first one will be at the Smyrna Community Center tomorrow at 7 p.m. Sorry, Commissioner Burrow, we did change that location in North and East Cobb, so we'll share that with you. And for those that spoke on pedestrian safety, I truly appreciate it and look forward to following up on that task force, because this is not something that we should allow to continue in our county. Thank you.
What's the Northeast Cobb Senior Center? It's Community Center.
Okay, thank you.
Critters.
Okay. All right, we'll change the language back. Yes, that's at Critters.
Yeah, it was on there, correct?
It will be changed. Commissioner Burrow is correcting me.
No, it was on the correct.
It was.
It was on the correct list I had.
We've been going back and forth all day with respect to the right names of the sites, but we will have that corrected for the one that will be in East Cobb. All right, thank you, Commissioner. With that, we've had a weighty meeting today. We've had the first of 3 public hearings regarding House Bill 581. Encourage our public to please come out to these meetings to get your questions answered so we can have clarification on the significant decision that this board has and how the homestead exemption is applied. I also encourage the county to please give us continuing grace as we get through the challenging time period of dealing with home rule and ultimately determining who will be the resulting District 2 and District 4 commissioners. This has not been an easy matter for this board to have endured. I recognize it has not been easy for our employees, and recognizably, it also has not been easy for our citizens. There is a path forward, regardless of what side or position you take, and that will be after the final election come the end of April. And I certainly look forward to that date and cannot encourage our citizens enough to know if you are in District 2 and 4, and to know that you have an upcoming election on February 11th to determine who will prevail from that primary. Please check out Cobb Elections if you are unsure, and help us move our county forward as we determine who will be or remain in those seats. With that, have a good evening and look forward to seeing you at our next BOC meeting.